The lights in the meeting room of the diplomatic vessel Handshake dimmed as the Vosic representative stood up. His blue skin glowed faintly in the darkness, the three eyes on his long face blinking in sequence. "We cannot agree to your terms," the alien said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. "The area you call Sector 17 is forbidden. We call it the Shroud. No ships go there. No mining happens there." Captain Jane Reed kept her face calm, though inside she felt her chance at a successful first-contact trade deal slipping away. The Vosic Confederation had valuable metals Earth needed. This meeting had to work. "May I ask why this sector is off-limits?" she asked. "Our scans show rich deposits of rare elements there." The three Vosic representatives looked at each other. The leader spoke again. "There are guardians there, ancient warships. They protect something terrible, something that must stay locked away." Admiral Marcus Wells, sitting beside Jane, couldn't hold back his snort of disbelief. The sound echoed in the quiet room. "You'll have to forgive my colleague," Jane said quickly. "We humans are curious by nature." "Curious is good," the Vosic said. "But the Shroud is death. All who enter do not return. This is known by all space-faring races." Admiral Wells leaned forward. His gray hair and lined face usually commanded respect, but now his expression showed only disbelief. "Are you suggesting we avoid the richest mining area in this sector because of some old stories?" he asked. The lead Vosic's skin darkened with emotion. "Not stories. Truth. Our oldest records speak of the Guardians, ships made by the Lost Ones, set to watch forever. They sleep until woken by those who would break the seal." "The seal?" Jane asked. "Between here and there. Between what is and what should not be," the Vosic replied. His voice had dropped to almost a whisper. "We do not speak of it more, but we warn you, as we have warned others. The Shroud is forbidden." With that, the Vosic delegation stood as one and left the room. 3 days later, in the Grand Chamber of the United Earth Council on Earth, Admiral Wells stood before the 60 representatives of humanity's unified government. "The Vosic are hiding something," he said, his voice booming through the hall. "Sector 17 contains enough rare elements to fuel Earth's expansion for a century, and they want us to avoid it because of ghost stories." Dr. Tom Foster, the head cynoanthropologist from Oxford University, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The council had called him to speak, but Wells had been talking for 20 minutes already. "The scans from our probe showed deposits worth trillions," Wells continued, pointing to the holographic display showing a star map. "Galtech is ready to begin mining operations immediately, with your approval." Council President Diane White finally raised her hand. "Thank you, Admiral. Let's hear from Dr. Foster now." Tom stood, adjusting his glasses. At 42, he was younger than most experts called before the council. His brown hair was already going gray from long nights studying alien cultures. "Council members," he began, "I've spent the last 3 days studying what we know of Vosic culture. They are not a superstitious species. They're logical, practical beings. If they fear something in this sector, we should take that seriously." "Do you have evidence of these Guardian warships?" a council member asked. Tom shook his head. "No direct evidence. But it's not just the Vosic. I found references in the cultural records of the Pellerin Alliance and the Myth Collective. Both mention avoiding the same region. They use different names, but the star charts match." Admiral Wells laughed. "So 3 alien races share the same fairy tales. That's hardly proof of anything." Tom frowned. "The stories have common elements across species that have never contacted each other. They all mention guardian ships protecting a boundary. They all warn of terrible consequences for crossing that boundary." "What kind of consequences?" President White asked. "The records aren't specific, just warnings that something dangerous is contained there," Tom replied. "But the fact that multiple species develop the same warnings independently suggests. It suggests nothing." Wells interrupted. except that space is full of superstition. Meanwhile, Earth needs those resources. Galtech has already invested billions in the mining equipment. The CEO of Galtech, Peter Roth, stood up from his observer seat. The Council should know that we're prepared to begin operations immediately. We've developed new extraction methods specifically for this mission. We've also created jobs for 10,000 workers. President White nodded. Thank you, Mr. Roth. She turned to Tom. Dr. Foster, do you have any concrete reason we should avoid this sector? Anything beyond these stories? Tom hesitated. I believe these myths contain truth. Many Earth myths turned out to have historical bases. The Trojan War, for example, or... Thank you, Doctor, she cut him off. The Council will now vote. Tom sat in his small university office, surrounded by ancient texts and holographic displays. It was 3 a.m., but he couldn't sleep. The Council had voted 42-18 to approve the mining operation. Earth Fleet's 7th Division would escort Galtech ships to Sector 17 in 1 month. His computer beeped. A new message from an old colleague on Proxima Centauri. Tom, found something you might want to see. Ancient myth cave paintings, just discovered. They show something guarding a tear in space. Dating puts them at over 40,000 years old. Sending the images now. Tom opened the attached files. His tired eyes widened as the images appeared. Crude but clear drawings showed tall, thin figures bowing before a massive shape, unmistakably a spacecraft of some kind. Behind it was a jagged line, like a crack, with dark tendrils reaching through. More images loaded. Different planets, different species, similar drawings, all showing the same things. Ships standing guard before a break in reality. Tom's hands shook as he sent an urgent message to Captain Reed, who was preparing to join the expedition. Jane, I found something. Multiple species, same morning. This isn't superstition. Something is out there, and we're about to wake it up. He attached the images and hit send. Then he made another decision. He had 3 weeks of leave saved up. The Intrepid, Earth's newest battleship, would lead the expedition to the Shroud. Tom needed to be on that ship, because if the myths were true, humanity was about to make a terrible mistake. The massive Earth battleship Intrepid cut through the darkness of space, its engines glowing blue against the black. Behind it followed 12 smaller ships, mining vessels, science ships, and military escorts. They formed Earth's first expedition to the area known as the Shroud. Captain Alex Morgan stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, watching the stars on the main screen. At 45, he had been in space for 20 years, but he had never seen a region quite like this. The stars ahead seemed dimmer somehow, as if covered by a thin cloth. How long until we enter the Shroud? He asked. His first officer, Jack Wilson, checked the instruments. About 30 minutes, sir. Alex nodded. And Dr. Foster, is he ready with his team? Yes, sir. They're in Science Lab 1, monitoring everything. Alex wasn't happy having a civilian scientist join this mission at the last minute, but Admiral Wells had approved it, saying that having an expert on alien cultures might be useful if they encountered anything strange. Sir, called out Lisa Green, the communications officer, I'm getting some odd readings. Our signals to Earth are experiencing delays. How bad? About 3 seconds longer than they should be. And there's some kind of echo effect I can't explain. Alex frowned. They weren't even in the Shroud yet. Keep monitoring it. In Science Lab 1, Dr. Tom Foster watched his screens with growing concern. Since joining the mission 3 days ago, he had set up equipment to detect any unusual patterns. Now, as they approached the Shroud, his instruments were picking up strange energy readings. Dr. Foster. A young voice interrupted his thoughts. Tom turned to see Riley Parker, a junior engineer who had been assigned to help his team. She was barely 25, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes. What is it, Riley? She held up her tablet. I was checking the ship's systems as you asked. There's something weird happening in the computer networks. Random symbols are appearing and disappearing in the code. Tom took the tablet and studied it. The symbols weren't from any Earth language, but they looked familiar. "I've seen these before," he said quietly, "in the myth cave paintings." Riley's eyes widened. "The alien warnings you told me about. But how could ancient symbols be appearing in our computers?" "I don't know. But we need to tell the captain." Before they could leave, the ship's lights flickered, and a low hum filled the air. "We've entered the Shroud," Tom said. On the bridge, Captain Morgan watched as the stars outside changed. The view wasn't what he expected. Instead of darkness, the Shroud was filled with a faint purple glow that seemed to shift and move like fog. "All ships report successful entry," Jack said, "but 3 of them are reporting equipment problems. The mining vessel Digger has lost long-range communications." "Sir," Lisa called out, "I'm getting reports from multiple crew members. They're saying they're having strange dreams while awake. Visions of some kind." Alex stood up from his chair. "Visions? What kind of visions?" "They describe seeing a vast emptiness, with something moving inside it, and giant ships standing guard." She looked up, her face pale. "Sir, I've seen them too. Just flashes, but they feel real." The door to the bridge opened, and Dr. Foster rushed in with Riley Parker. "Captain, we need to talk," Tom said urgently. "Something is affecting the ship's systems. Ancient symbols are appearing in our computers." Alex was about to respond when the science officer called out, "Captain, I'm detecting something amazing. The asteroid field ahead. The mineral readings are off the charts. I've never seen concentrations like this before." All eyes turned to the main screen. The purple haze had cleared enough to reveal a massive asteroid field. Even from this distance, they could see the asteroids glittering with metallic veins. "It's exactly what Galtech was hoping for," Jack whispered. "There's enough there to make this mission worth 10 times its cost." Alex looked at Dr. Foster. "What do you think? Those symbols in our computers, are they some kind of warning?" Tom nodded. "I believe so. But I also think they're trying to communicate something more complex. I need time to study them." "Time is money, Doctor," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see William Stone, the Galtech representative, stepping onto the bridge. "We came here to mine, not to study ghost stories." Alex frowned. "Mr. Stone, you're not authorized to be on the bridge during operations." Stone smiled coldly. "Perhaps you should check your orders again, Captain. Galtech has been given priority on this mission. Admiral Wells was very clear about that." Alex checked his tablet and saw a new message from Admiral Wells. The orders were clear. Mining operations were to begin immediately upon finding suitable deposits. "Fine," Alex said, "but we proceed with caution. Jack, choose the smallest asteroid with good mineral readings. We'll start there." 6 hours later, the mining ship Digger had positioned itself next to a medium-sized asteroid. Drilling equipment extended from the ship, biting into the rock. The first samples were already being processed. Riley Parker stood in engineering, watching the power readings from the mining operation. Something wasn't right. The equipment was drawing more power than it should. "Chief," she called to her boss, "look at these readings." Chief Engineer Dave Miller came over. "That can't be right. It's like the asteroid is resisting somehow." A sudden alarm blared. The ship shuddered. "All crew to emergency stations," came Captain Morgan's voice over the speakers. "We're detecting unusual energy readings from the largest asteroid in the field. All mining operations are suspended." Riley rushed to a viewport and looked out at the massive asteroid at the center of the field. It was at least 20 miles across, dwarfing all the others. As she watched, a crack appeared on its surface, glowing with blue light. "That's not natural," Dave said, standing beside her. The crack spread, forming a pattern across the asteroid's surface. It wasn't random. It was geometric, purposeful. Riley's tablet beeped. On the screen, the strange symbols appeared again. But this time they were changing, forming new patterns. "It's a message," she whispered. "Whatever's in that asteroid is waking up." On the bridge, Captain Morgan watched in stunned silence as the surface of the giant asteroid split open like a hatching egg. Inside was not rock, but metal, a massive structure that had been hidden beneath the surface. "Sir," Jack said, his voice shaking, "that's a ship. A ship bigger than anything humanity has ever built." Dr. Foster stepped forward, his face pale. "Captain, we need to leave. Now." That's one of the guardian vessels from the myths. But it was too late. The enormous ship was already rising from its asteroid shell, ancient systems coming to life after countless years of sleep. And as it rose, a message beamed out to every ship in the human fleet, in perfect, flawless English. "You were warned. The boundary must not be crossed. Cease operations, or face judgment." Silence filled the bridge of the Intrepid as the crew stared at the massive ship rising from the asteroid. It was unlike anything humans had ever built or seen. Its surface gleamed with a metal that seemed to shift colors as it moved, from deep blue to purple to silver. There were no visible windows, thrusters, or weapons, just smooth, flowing lines that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. "It's beautiful," someone whispered. Captain Alex Morgan snapped out of his shock. "All ships, pull back to safe distance. No hostile actions." He turned to Communications Officer Lisa. "Send a message back. Tell them we mean no harm and didn't understand the warning." Before Lisa could send the message, William Stone stepped forward. "Captain, I must remind you that Earth needs these resources. We can't just run away at the first sign of trouble." Dr. Tom Foster, who had been studying the giant ship on his tablet, looked up with wide eyes. "That's not just any ship. It matches the descriptions from the ancient texts perfectly. It's one of the guardian vessels." "What exactly is it guarding, Doctor?" Alex asked. "The texts call it the boundary, some kind of barrier between dimensions or realities. The details are vague, but all the stories agree. Breaking the boundary lets something terrible through." The ship's communication system crackled, and Admiral Wells' voice came through from Earth Command. His image appeared on the main screen, looking stern and determined. "Captain Morgan, we're seeing the situation. That alien vessel represents technology beyond anything humanity has encountered. Your new orders are to disable and capture it if possible." Alex stared at the screen in disbelief. "Admiral, that ship is at least 5 miles long. It just woke up after who knows how many thousands of years. And it's warning us away for a reason." "Those are your orders, Captain," Wells said firmly. "That ship is sitting on top of resources Earth needs, and its technology could advance humanity by centuries." The screen went dark as the connection cut off. Alex looked around at his crew, then at Dr. Foster. "What do you think will happen if we attack it?" Tom shook his head. "Nothing good." "Sir," Jack Wilson called out, "the mining ships are pulling back, but Galtech's main vessel resource is moving forward. They're powering up drilling equipment." On the screen, they could see the smaller ship approaching the asteroid field again, apparently ignoring the Guardian's warning. "Stone." Alex turned to the Galtech representative. "Order your ship to stand down." William Stone smiled coldly. "I'm afraid they have their orders directly from Galtech headquarters. The Admiral supports our position." Before Alex could respond, the Guardian vessel moved. It was impossibly fast for something so large. One moment it was floating above the asteroid, and the next it was directly in front of the resource. No flash of engines, no visible movement. It simply was there. A beam of soft blue light extended from the Guardian to the resource. The mining ship froze in space, all its lights flickering and then going out. "What did it do?" Alex demanded. The science officer checked the readings. "The resource still has life support, but all other systems are offline. It's like it just turned them off." "That's impossible," Stone whispered, his confidence cracking. "No technology can do that." "Sir," Lisa called out, her voice shaking. "We're receiving a message from the Guardian. Audio and visual." "Put it on screen," Alex ordered. The main screen flickered, and an image appeared. It wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of an alien being, they saw what looked like a human face, but not quite. The features were too perfect, too symmetrical. The eyes were slightly larger, the skin glowing faintly from within. When it spoke, its mouth movements matched the words perfectly. "Your kind was always impatient," the being said, its voice deep and musical. "This is why the boundary must be protected. You do not understand what you risk." Alex stepped forward. "Who are you? What is this boundary you're protecting?" "I am Guardian Shield 7, autonomous sentinel of the Dimensional Seal. I was created by those you would call the precursors to prevent the crossing of realities." Dr. Foster moved closer to the screen, his academic curiosity overcoming his fear. "The precursors. The Vosic called them the Lost Ones." "Yes," the Guardian replied. "They were lost because they did not heed their own warnings. I remained to prevent others from making the same mistake." Riley Parker had quietly entered the bridge during this exchange. She stepped forward now, holding her tablet. "The symbols in our computers, they're from the precursors, aren't they?" The Guardian's gaze shifted to her. "Yes. The warning symbols activate in any technology that enters the Shroud. They are designed to prevent what you are attempting." William Stone had been listening with growing impatience. "This is ridiculous. Captain, we need those resources. Earth Command has ordered us to—" "To be quiet, Mr. Stone," Alex interrupted. He turned back to the screen. "Guardian, we didn't understand the warning. But now that we do, we'll respect the boundary. We'll leave this area." "It is too late," the Guardian said. "Your mining has already begun to weaken the seal. I must repair it. And you have called others to this place." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" Jack Wilson looked up from his console. "Sir, we're detecting multiple ships entering the Shroud. It's the Second Fleet. Admiral Wells must have sent them as backup." On a secondary screen, they could see Earth vessels appearing at the edge of the Shroud. Newer, more heavily armed battleships led by the Conqueror, Earth's most powerful warship. "Captain Morgan," came Admiral Wells' voice over the communication system. "Stand down. The new fleet will handle this alien vessel." The Guardian turned its gaze from the screen, looking towards the approaching fleet. "They bring weapons designed to pierce my shields. They have studied the warning symbols and created countermeasures. This is unexpected." For the first time, the perfect face showed what looked like concern. Dr. Foster stepped closer to Alex. "Captain, I think the Guardian is actually trying to protect us. If the Admiral attacks and somehow damages it." Alex nodded and opened a channel to the approaching fleet. "Admiral Wells, I strongly advise against hostile action. The Guardian is protecting something called the Dimensional Seal. Damaging it could have serious consequences." "Your concerns are noted, Captain," Wells replied coldly. "But this decision has been made at the highest levels. That alien ship is now Earth property." The lead ship of the new fleet, the Conqueror, moved forward, its weapons powering up. Green energy gathered at the tips of its main guns, experimental weapons developed in secret by Earth's military. The Guardian's expression changed to something like sadness. "Then I must show you why the boundary exists. Perhaps then you will understand." Its massive ship turned towards the asteroid field. A section of its smooth hull opened, revealing what looked like a massive crystal. The crystal began to glow with increasing brightness, sending a beam of light into the space between the asteroids. The fabric of space itself seemed to tear open, creating a window into something else, something that made everyone who saw it feel sick with fear. Beyond the tear was emptiness, but an emptiness that seemed alive somehow. And in that living void, something moved, something vast and hungry, reaching tentacle-like shadows towards the opening. The Guardian closed the tear quickly, but not before one thin tendril of darkness had slipped through. It writhed in space for a moment before the Guardian's ship fired a pulse of energy that made it dissolve into nothing. "That," said the Guardian, "is what waits beyond. That is the hunger. And it has sensed you now." Complete silence filled the bridge of the Intrepid. Every crew member stared at the screen where they had just seen something impossible, a tear in reality itself, and something dark and hungry reaching through before the Guardian sealed it away. Admiral Wells' voice broke the silence. "Captain Morgan, what just happened?" "Our sensors detected some kind of spatial anomaly." Alex swallowed hard before answering. "Admiral, the Guardian showed us what it's protecting us from. There's something on the other side of what it calls the boundary. Something dangerous. More alien tricks," Wells dismissed. "They're trying to scare us away from the resources." Dr. Tom Foster stepped forward. "Admiral, with all respect, that was no trick. Every myth, every warning across a dozen alien cultures, they were all trying to tell us about this. If the Guardian is damaged and can't protect the boundary, the hunger comes through," finished Riley Parker. She had been quiet, working on her tablet. "Sir, I've been analyzing the symbols that appeared in our systems. They're not just warnings. They're memories." "Memories?" asked Captain Morgan. Riley nodded. "I think when we sleep, when we dream here in the Shroud, we're not just having nightmares. We're accessing memories somehow stored in this region of space. Memories from the precursors." The Guardian's face appeared on the screen again. "The young one is correct. My creators left memory imprints within the Shroud, activated by compatible neural patterns. They hoped that advanced species would understand the warnings before proceeding." "And the resources?" William Stone asked, his voice now lacking its earlier confidence. "The rare minerals in these asteroids. They are waste products," the Guardian replied, "created by my maintenance of the boundary. The energy exchange creates these elements as a byproduct. They are not meant to be harvested. They help stabilize this region." On the secondary screen, they could see the Conqueror and the Second Fleet continuing to advance, weapons still powered up. "Admiral Wells," Alex said urgently, "you need to stand down. We've seen what's at stake here." Wells' face appeared, looking determined. "Captain, I have direct orders from Earth Council. That alien vessel must be secured. Its technology is too valuable to ignore. Your weapons cannot destroy me," the Guardian said, now addressing Wells directly, "but they can damage my ability to maintain the boundary. Is your desire for advancement worth risking everything?" "We'll take that chance," Wells replied coldly. "All ships, prepare to fire on my mark." Captain Morgan looked at his bridge crew, then made a decision. "Helm, position the Intrepid between the Guardian and the Second Fleet." Jack Wilson stared at him. "Sir, that's directly against orders." "I know, but I won't let us start an interdimensional disaster because of greed." Alex opened a channel to all Earth ships. "This is Captain Morgan. I have seen direct evidence that the Guardian is protecting us from a genuine threat. I am placing the Intrepid in defensive position. I urge all ships to stand down." 3 of the smaller vessels from Alex's fleet moved to join the Intrepid. The others remained in place, unsure what to do. "Morgan, this is mutiny," Wells warned. "Move your ship immediately." "I can't do that, Admiral. Not after what we've seen." The Guardian watched this exchange, then spoke again. "I see that some among you understand. Perhaps there is hope." Its ship moved forward, positioning itself in front of the Intrepid. "Stand aside, Captain. I will not let your ship be damaged for protecting me." Before Alex could respond, the Conqueror fired. A brilliant green beam shot toward the Guardian vessel. The beam struck an invisible barrier around the Guardian, creating a shower of multicolored energy. The barrier held, but the Guardian's ship trembled slightly. "Interesting," the Guardian said. "Your weapons are more advanced than expected for your development stage. You have been artificially accelerated." The Conqueror fired again, joined by 2 other battleships. This time, the Guardian's shield flickered visibly. "Stop," Dr. Foster shouted. though only those on the Intrepid could hear him. "You're damaging the boundary." Around them, space itself seemed to waver. Small tears appeared and disappeared at random points throughout the shroud. Through each tear, for just a moment, they could see darkness moving. The Guardian's ship began to glow, energy building around it. "I have avoided harming your vessels, but I cannot allow this to continue." A pulse of blue energy spread outward from the Guardian vessel. As it passed over each human ship, their lights flickered and went out. One by one, the attacking vessels went dark, floating powerless in space. Only the Intrepid remained untouched. "What did you do to them?" Alex asked. "I have temporarily disabled their power systems," the Guardian replied. "Life support remains functional. They are in no danger." Admiral Wells' voice came through on emergency channels, angry but also scared. "What have you done?" "Restore power immediately." "I cannot," the Guardian said. "Not until the boundary is secured again. Your weapons have caused damage that must be repaired." Riley Parker, who had been working frantically at a console, looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm detecting energy fluctuations throughout the shroud. The boundary is becoming unstable." The Guardian's face showed concern. "The damage is worse than I expected. I must focus on repairs now." It looked directly at Captain Morgan. "You have a choice to make, Captain. Will you help me, or will you continue to follow those who would risk everything?" Alex didn't hesitate. "What do you need us to do?" "The small tears must be sealed before they grow. My ship can do this, but I need time. You must protect me from any further attacks." "The Admiral won't stop," Jack Wilson said quietly. "Once his ships have power, he'll attack again." "Then we need to convince him," Alex said. He turned to Dr. Foster. "Doctor, you said these symbols are memories. Is there a way to share them more directly? To show the Admiral what we've seen?" Tom thought for a moment. "Riley said our dreams here are accessing those memories. Maybe if we could amplify that connection somehow." The Guardian spoke. "It is possible. My creators designed the memory imprints to be received by compatible minds. I can strengthen the connection, but it must be voluntary." "Will it work through space? Can you reach the Admiral's ship?" Alex asked. "Yes, but it will divert energy from my repairs." Alex looked around at his crew. "It's worth the risk. We need to make them understand." The Guardian nodded. "Very well. I will create a shared memory space. Those who wish to see the truth may enter it." Its ship began to pulse with a soft, golden light. On the bridge of the Intrepid, everyone felt a gentle tug at the edge of their minds, like the beginning of a dream. "It's starting," Riley whispered. "I can feel it." The shared memory began to form. It showed a civilization of beings similar to humans, but more advanced. They had discovered the boundary between dimensions, and in their curiosity, had weakened it. The memory showed the hunger breaking through, consuming entire worlds. It showed the desperate creation of the Guardian vessels as a last defense, and the sacrifice of the precursors to power the boundary seal. The final memory was the clearest, a precursor leader looking directly at them, speaking words that everyone somehow understood. "If you see this, then our Guardians still stand. Learn from our mistake. The hunger never stops, it never sleeps, and now it knows you exist." As the memory faded, Captain Morgan looked around his bridge. Every crew member's face showed the same mix of awe and terror. "Did the Admiral see it?" he asked. Lisa checked her communications panel. "Sir, I'm getting calls from every ship in both fleets. They all experienced the memory." A new voice came through the speakers. Admiral Wells, but changed. His tone was subdued, shaken. "Captain Morgan, we had no idea. The Council never would have approved this mission if we'd known. Now you understand why the Guardians exist." The ship responded. "Now you know what must be protected." Suddenly, alarms blared across the Intrepid. "Captain," Riley called out, "the boundary. It's failing faster than the Guardian can repair it." The Guardian's ship pulsed with energy as it worked to repair the damaged boundary. Around it, space itself seemed to be tearing, small rips appearing and disappearing like blinking eyes. Through each tear, darkness moved and reached. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Captain Alex Morgan watched the largest tear growing despite the Guardian's efforts. It was now the size of a small moon and still expanding. "It's not working," Dr. Tom Foster said quietly. "The Guardian can't seal it fast enough." The Guardian's face appeared on their screen again, its perfect features now showing signs of strain. "The damage is too extensive. My systems are operating beyond capacity, but the boundary continues to fail." Admiral Wells, speaking from his powerless ship, asked the question everyone was thinking. What happens if the boundary fails completely? "The hunger will enter your reality," the Guardian replied simply. "It will consume all energy, all matter, all life, as it did in 7 other realities before my creators managed to contain it." Riley Parker had been working frantically at her console. She looked up suddenly. "What if we help? The Guardian said these minerals and the asteroids help stabilize the region. What if we use them somehow?" Tom's eyes widened. "Yes, the mining ships. They have equipment to process those minerals." Alex turned to the Guardian. "Is it possible? Could our ships help stabilize the boundary using the asteroid materials?" The Guardian was silent for a moment, as if calculating. "It might work. The elements in the asteroids do resonate with the boundary's frequency, but your technology is primitive compared to my creators." "But not completely incompatible," Riley insisted. "Our ships were able to mine the asteroids. Maybe with your guidance, we could reconfigure the mining equipment to help strengthen the boundary instead." The Guardian considered this. "There is one possibility. My creators designed me with emergency protocols. I can temporarily extend my systems through compatible technology. If your ships were to position themselves around the primary breach and channel the refined minerals through your energy systems, we create a supporting network," Alex finished. "We could help hold the boundary while you repair it." "Precisely," the Guardian confirmed. "But it would require all your ships working together, and the reconfiguration would place enormous strain on your systems. Some may not survive the process." Alex opened a channel to all ships. "You all heard that. We need volunteers to position their ships around the breach to help seal it. I won't order anyone to do this." There was a moment of silence. Then Admiral Wells spoke. "The Conqueror will take point position as soon as you restore our power." One by one, captains from every ship in both fleets volunteered. "It seems humanity can learn quickly when needed," the Guardian observed. With a pulse of energy, power was restored to all the human ships. The next hours were a blur of frantic activity. Under Riley's and the Guardian's guidance, the mining ships reconfigured their processing equipment to channel the special minerals. The military vessels, including the Conqueror and Intrepid, positioned themselves in a precise formation around the largest breach. The Guardian sent detailed instructions to each ship. Energy conduits were connected between vessels, creating a web that surrounded the tear in reality. Inside the tear, the hunger seemed to be watching them, dark tendrils occasionally reaching out only to be pushed back by the Guardian's energy. "All ships report ready," Jack Wilson announced from his station. Alex took a deep breath. "Begin the sequence." The mining vessels activated their modified systems. They began to process the asteroid materials, channeling the resulting energy through the military ships. The Intrepid shuddered as power beyond its design specifications flowed through its systems. "Hull temperature rising," Jack reported. "Power conduits at 180% capacity and climbing." "Hold it together," Alex murmured, to his ship as much as to his crew. The Guardian's vessel moved to the center of the formation, directly in front of the breach. It began to pulse with blinding light as it drew power from the human network. "It's working," Riley called out. "The breach is shrinking." On the screen, they could see the tear in reality slowly closing. But the strain on the ships was becoming critical. Warning lights flashed across every console. "We're losing the miner too," Lisa reported. "Their systems are overloading." The Conqueror's main reactor is approaching critical, another officer added. Admiral Wells' voice came through, calm despite the danger. We'll hold as long as we can, Captain Morgan. The Guardian spoke, its voice now echoing strangely. I am channeling all available power to seal the boundary. But there is an irregularity in the pattern. The breach has adapted. Tom Foster looked up from his readings. Adapted? You mean the hunger is fighting back? Yes, it is. Intelligent, in its way. It remembers the precursors. And now it has sensed you. The Guardian's voice became urgent. There is something I did not tell you. Something I was programmed to reveal only in the most dire circumstances. Tell us now, Alex urged. The precursors did not merely create me. Before their civilization fell, they seeded life throughout this galaxy. Life that carried a small part of their essence, their pattern. Tom gasped as understanding dawned. You're saying? Yes, humans are descendants of the precursors, genetically modified to evolve in this world. This is why you develop so quickly compared to other species. This is why the memory imprints work so strongly with your minds. A stunned silence fell across the bridge. That's why you look almost human, Riley whispered. You were made in their image. And in yours, the Guardian confirmed. This connection gives us an advantage. Together, we might succeed where the precursors alone failed. The Guardian's ship began to change shape, parts of it extending outward like branches of a tree. These extensions reached toward the human ships, connecting to them directly. What are you doing? Admiral Wells demanded. Creating a true network. Your ships alone cannot channel enough power, but if I extend my systems through your vessels, using your connection to the precursors. The moment the connections were complete, everyone on every ship felt a strange sensation, as if their minds were suddenly part of something larger. Through this connection, they could sense the boundary, could feel the hunger pressing against it like a vast weight. And together, they pushed back. The Guardian guided them, showing each ship how to focus their energy. The power drain was enormous. Systems failed across the fleet, but still they held. The breach began to close more rapidly now. The hunger's tendrils writhed and fought, but they were being pushed back through the shrinking tear. With a final surge of power that caused half the remaining systems on the Intrepid to blow out, the breach sealed with a silent flash of light. The Guardian's ship returned to its original form, the connections to the human vessels withdrawing. It is done. The boundary is restored. Across the human fleet, crews cheered despite their exhaustion. They had faced an impossible threat and survived. 1 month later, Captain Jane Reed stood before the United Earth Council. The chamber was packed with representatives not just from Earth, but from a dozen alien species, including the Vosic. The Guardian has agreed to a treaty, she announced. The Shroud will be declared a protected zone, jointly monitored by all spacefaring races, and humanity has been asked to take a special role. What role is that? President White asked. As descendants of the precursors, we have a unique connection to the Guardian technology. The Guardian has asked for human volunteers to be trained as what it calls boundary wardens, people who will work with the Guardian to maintain the seals. Dr. Tom Foster stepped forward. Already, hundreds of people have volunteered. The Guardian is teaching us about our heritage, about the technology the precursors left behind. Jane nodded to the Vosic representatives. We owe you an apology. You warned us, and we didn't listen. The lead Vosic stood. You were not the first to ignore warnings, and may not be the last. But you are the first to help repair the damage you caused, and the first to be recognized by the Guardian as kin to the Makers. As the council meeting continued, Captain Alex Morgan stood on the observation deck of the newly repaired Intrepid, looking out at Earth below. Riley Parker joined him, now wearing the silver uniform of the Boundary Wardens. Do you ever regret it? She asked, going into the Shroud despite the warnings. Alex considered this. We made a mistake, a bad one, but we also found a truth that had been waiting for us for thousands of years. He looked at her. "The Guardian told me something before we left. It said that the precursors believed their descendants would someday return and take up their mantle, not just as protectors of the boundary, but as guardians of all life in this galaxy." Riley smiled. "That's a big responsibility." "Yes," Alex agreed, watching as a Guardian vessel, smaller than the original but just as beautiful, glided past the station in orbit. "But for the first time, I think we might be ready for it."